Hello and welcome to RPGs Uncovered. We are back for another WIP Workshop creator interview. It's been a while since I've done my last one. Life has been happening in the background, as it does to all of us, but I am excited to get back to another creator interview, and especially to this one. I've been looking at this for a while. We've gone back and forth a little bit. I got a little bit of a sneak preview. I am really excited to help introduce you guys to Witches of Midnight. It is a Forged in the Dark based game, so if you're familiar with Blades in the Dark or a number of other Forged in the Dark, you may be familiar with it. But it adds that nice new witchy element to it, and I'm really excited to hear you guys talk about that. But let's introduce everybody before we get into the game itself. You guys know who I am because you're here. So I won't go into that too much. Hi, I'm Jack. You can follow me down on all the things listed below. I do these creator interviews and I do Learning the Game episodes of my normal RPGs Uncovered series that I run on Saturday. So head over to the scheduled tab, follow us on Twitter, Discord, all of that stuff, and you can learn more. But we are here to talk to amazing indie creators, and this week we have Gavin and Andrea. So hello and welcome. How about you two introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you have going on?
Yeah, my name is Andrea. I am a co-author and creative director for Wishes of Midnight at Balsamic Moon Games Collective, and this is my partner.
Hi, I'm Gavin, they, them pronouns. And yeah, I'm the lead lore weaver for the game. We're also both streamers of the game and other Balsamic Games creations. Yeah, we're really, really excited to be bringing Witches of Midnight to you.
Excellent. Yeah, I've dropped your Twitter handle in the chat. I didn't put your whole link tree or anything on there, but go check out the Twitter. They have a great link tree. Heads to all kinds of stuff, including the Kickstarter, which I will also be dropping a link to here. And go check out Witches of Midnight on YouTube and Twitch because it looks like such a fun game. They have a great cast. They have a lot of fun with it. So it looks like a really cool show. So if you're looking for some witchy Forged in the Dark action, go check that out. Not right now. Stay and listen to this, and then go check it out. All right, so let me drop Witches of Midnight Kickstarter in there. All right, so you can go head over to that. The Kickstarter is dropping on June 21st, which is a particularly interesting day for the theme, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both practicing witches, and so yeah, it's an important game day to us for multiple reasons. It's our anniversary, and yeah, also the day we met. So 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
Um, so
congratulations.
thank you. And so when yeah, summer solstice also in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer when we were searching for a go live date. And
Excellent.
yeah, that it's fast approaching.
I
One
love when
week.
it comes together like that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so you're both co-authors of Witches of Midnight, but of course, it looks like you have quite an extensive team, helping to work with this, helping to promote in other areas, and on your on your actual play. Anyone in particular you wanna call out, helping
Oh
you make this
gosh.
happen?
So many people.
Yeah.
Witches of Midnight Games is the main website for the game itself. And we have a full team roster there. But by Francita Soto, who has worked on a large number of indie games, is working on our layout. Also did our logos and a number of other odds and ends. She helped us with the Kickstarter, getting some nice graphics out there. So yeah, she's indispensable. Also did our grimoire sheets, our character sheets, our playbooks, and our coven sheets. So yeah, huge part of the team. And Mia Robot Rainbows is our lead illustrator on the tarot deck that we're working on.
Nice.
Yeah, there. And then our community leader is Isabella Donna. So helps us out on Discord and coordinates things there, which is really awesome.
Hmm. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I know how much work it is to do everything, and having a team is so helpful. So I like to make sure we can give a shout out to everyone helping along. Yeah, but I do have to say, I've gotten a little bit of a sneak preview, and the artwork for this game, the logo, different backdrops, layout that I've seen on here, all excellent stuff. So I can't wait for the Kickstarter to drop so you guys can scroll through and see all those pretty pictures. Because this looks like it's going to be a very pretty and very well laid out, accessible game.
Thank
All
you. That's what
right.
we're doing.
Right. Okay, so let's start as I usually do with getting to know you guys as creators and what led you to making Witches of Midnight. So well let's start there. What experience has led you to say, hey, I wanna make a game and I wanna make this particular game.
Do you want to start that?
Yeah, so we played a lot. Well, my very first game was Werewolf, the Apocalypse,
Mm,
and I really loved the spiritual aspects in that game. I loved the stepping sideways and dealing with totem spirits and different, all that kind of fun stuff that made that game feel really important and substantial to me. So we started to make this game as a like forged in the dark hack of werewolf, and then we just kind of were like, I can't think of a witch game that feels like this to us. So we're
hmm
like, well, I guess we'll make one, and that's where we did.
Yeah, it was really that simple. It was
Mhm.
a werewolf hack, so we could play a narrative driven fiction first werewolf game, and we just dropped the werewolf elements as soon as we
hmm
uh, realized that this needed to exist,
Excellent.
and ran with it.
Yeah, I've been looking over this, talking about it with some people, and I've been describing it kind of like Cyberpunk without cyber, or Shadowrun meets World of Darkness,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but with a witchy
I
vibe to it.
Yeah.
you're hitting the nail on the head there.
Excellent.
Um, not that it was super intentional, but we are also huge Shadowrun fans as well.
I love to hear
Um,
that.
when we can get the rules pushed to the side just enough
Mm,
that we can tell a fun story, we love
there you go.
Shadowrun.
I'm a
Uh,
huge Shadowrun fan.
yeah. So, and who doesn't love D6s and massive handfuls of
Yeah.
D6s? Yeah, it's just so much fun. But yeah, I've been developing games for us actually for um, coming up on 40 years now, or 30 years now. Uh, Getting my decades mixed up.
Well,
But
you
yeah,
don't
I've
look it at
been
all.
I've been making games for my home groups since before I'd even heard of what I call the ampersand game.
hmm
I didn't know tabletop games existed. I only played video games at that time. So when we knew there was never going to be a sequel to Final Fantasy II, we
mm
said we've got to write our own version of Final Fantasy II to play. And so we did that, and that turned into its own game system. And then we found out about actual tabletop role playing games and dice instead of calculators. And that made things a lot easier.
mm
But this is the first game that we've ever really felt like we had something that had to get out into the
Mhm.
world. We couldn't just share it amongst our friends. It was too important to. I mean, that might sound a little egotistical, but once you know what's sort of going on in this game, I think it'll make sense.
hmm Yeah, I've briefly skimmed through it, and I mean, you've clearly put a lot of work into this. There's a lot of lore that you've put into it. I see there's a timeline. There's sort of a truncated, like, alternate universe history, which goes into like the native population of the Americas and
Yeah.
other developmental stages of our nation, our society. So
Right.
disabled accessibility and all of that, queer accessibility and celebration. There's a lot in this game that I would say does make it an important contribution to the general gaming horizons out there. I think there's a lot in here that can really help tell stories that we haven't seen, or we haven't had the tools to help facilitate as much before.
Yeah, I think we owe a lot of that to our personal witchcraft practice that's very different even between the two of us,
Yes.
as well as watching or listening to actual play podcasts like the Magpies that really showed us that you don't need bigotry in a game, even if it's the enemies that are
Mm-hmm.
bigoted. You don't need that to create conflict.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mhm.
tell an amazing story without the bigotry, without the hatred. Um, you can have really, really nuanced stories. We have 22 factions in the current version of the game to match the Major Arcana tarot cards. And when we did that, we were very intentional about making sure that almost all of them are redeemable in
Mm.
some way, so that if a group decided that they wanted to play with a certain faction, there would be a way to sort of turn them around and in a way that you can take their gray and turn it into something
Mm-hmm.
more positive. Or if the lore weaver has control of them more as an enemy, you can definitely take that gray and turn that real dark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, lots of leeway there.
And that helps make antagonists really relatable and fleshed out and enjoyable. I love stories where the antagonists are, you love to hate them, or you can see you can see where they're coming from. They're not doing it right, but you can see where they're coming from. I love
Right.
relatable enemies.
Absolutely.
But I think no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying we do too. Realizing it, and I think this comes from, to a degree, playing a lot of Old World of Darkness.
Mm,
Mhm.
How every clan in Vampire sees itself as, or sees everyone else in the worst possible light,
mm-hmm.
but its own clan, they're pure and perfect, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it right.
Right.
But then you play with another from another clan's angle, and you realize, oh, they didn't understand us at all. They're the ones that are wrong, and we're right.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of just go around the table like that, and it makes things very, very interesting. It makes the politics of that game world really
Mm-hmm.
work. And we were really trying to do the same thing
Yeah.
here. And I think from
I
our
think we did pretty well.
60 sessions of playtesting we've done so far, 60 or 70
Mm,
actually. I keep getting my tens digits one off,
mm.
but that yeah, it's working out pretty well for us.
Very nice. Yeah, I love games with a little bit of that political background, playing the game as it were, World of Darkness style, Shadowrun style, and I can definitely see the building of blocks of that here. So let's use that to segue into talking about the setting itself. And as I said, I've described it as a sort of modern day alternate universe. Magics meets some level of technology, very World of Darkness sort of style. Talk a little bit about the setting. I know in the book here it says that it focuses around a metropolis very much like New York City.
That's true. Yes. So, yeah, to summarize the events of what's happened in the last roughly 300 years, a few witches in Scotland realized that they had the power to stop the witch trials that were going on there, and it would make a really good change to the trajectory that the world was going in.
Mm,
And so they decided, despite the fact that up until that point, witches had sort of hidden in plain sight, and no one knew that magic was real, they decided we have to come out of the broom closet, as it were, and step into society and actually make a positive change. And when they did, for a time, they were embraced, and they did make a lot of positive changes in society. Um, and so on and so on. And things have gotten quite a bit worse in the intervening time period, particularly in the last 75 years or so. And that is why we center sort of on Midnight, which is this dark city that is the same place as New York City. And it is the only part of North America that is populated by outsiders. So the non-native people, that's the only land they have. So outside of that, if you were to port our factions into another location, it would be very similar to how it is now, just with witches. So New York is this interesting. It's sort of like a middle ground between the mundane world and the magical world. It has unique characteristics in the magical world, and it connects to other realms in a really uh, unusual way for the rest of the world. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like a vortex that's just pulling witches toward it. So you get this grandly diverse population of witches and mundanes living in that society.
So in Midnight, mundanes, as you call them, are fairly used to seeing witches flying around on
Yeah,
broomsticks, casting spells. It's part of everyday life.
exactly.
Interesting.
However, the a faction has come to power about 75 years ago, who started out as a grand humanitarian effort to provide witches in a post-war society with the ability to sort of thrive in midnight. And that organization has become twisted as the years have gone on. And at this point, they think the only way that they can protect humanity, specifically in midnight, is to bind the greatest, most powerful abilities that witches have, called wild magic.
Hmm.
So if you are in midnight, you are expected to be bound, to have that power bound from you. You retain the rest of your abilities, but you are then expected to work your way into a sort of what we call a congregation, which is a group of witches with a common goal, but they're all bound. Player characters have all decided to rebel against that and to not let their powers be bound.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the Witchpunk aspect
Yeah.
of the game that I love. Yeah. So this organization, that's the Order,
The
right?
order,
Excellent.
correct?
Yeah, and they sort of bureaucratize the whole witch society, bind witches together, and as you said, your player characters rebel against that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They have a private military that is watching for wild magic at all times. So, uh, if you've played Blades in the Dark, and you know if you murder someone,
Hmm.
they will. There's a group that instantly knows that someone's been killed and will come and begin to hunt you down and find out what happened. We have a very
Yeah.
similar faction called the Red Watch that works for the Order, who has an ability to see wild magic, and then they could come in and try to arrest you and have you
Hmm.
bound against your will.
So, in brief, what is this wild magic that they bind away from everyone else?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wild magic is basically like the deepest part of your magic that can be the most explosive, the most powerful, the most kind of just anything that you can think of, you can do with wild magic. I guess an example of that would be one of the characters I played was a Baba, which is kind of like our necromancer guardian, home guardian kind of playbook kind of situation. And with a wild magic roll, I resurrected a mass grave that was under a
Like
what are they called?
washing.
Yeah, a wash house. No, a
Yeah.
laundry.
Laundry.
A laundry. And they came up and they fought all of our enemies, and we were able to kind of bring justice to all the people who had been buried in that grave.
Hmm.
And it was when generally when you have resurrection power, it's like one or two people at a time. But with wild magic, like I said, I was able to get I don't know, like hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. The powers emanate from three aspects of your character. One is your tarot card aspect that is built into your character that gives you a way of a way to visualize some aspects. So if you had the tower, you'd probably on your tarot card have a picture of a tower, maybe some lightning, uh, and someone falling off of the tower is generally how they are. And so if your wild magic ability that you use uses any of those aspects, then you're going to get an extra die to your roll. And the same goes for your heritage, which we'll talk about later, and the same goes for your grimoire. And once all three of those combine, if you can work them all into the ability you're using, you're going to have a larger number of dice and a better chance of succeeding. If you fail, that's when it gets really fun for the lore weaver, because that's when we get to impose what we call grand and arcane complications, which could include teleporting all of the characters involved to a complete different realm or another part of the world, or shapeshifting everyone into weird and strange forms. That might take another undertaking for them to figure out how to fix it.
I love games where magic can go wrong. Love it. All right, and another interesting thing to point out, one thing that stuck with me when I was looking through, wild witches, wild magic messes around with technology, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's when you're an unbound witch, you're sort of there's essence, your magical. Uh,
It's midichlorians now.
your magic is kind of you've got kind of a magical field around you, would be one way of
Hmm.
thinking about it. And when you get close to electronics, especially complex, tiny parts where electricity has to run down a certain path, otherwise, if it jumps between two paths, it's going to possibly destroy the machine, or at least not make it work the way it's
Hmm.
intended. Well, Wild Witch's powers do exactly that to all technology. So you find witches driving old cars that have no onboard computers. You find witches using revolvers instead of modern handguns, and things like that. It permeates the entire game. But one of the most interesting things about that is you are completely cut off from the electronic currency of the game world.
Hmm.
So, uh, however, you're a witch and you're able to do almost anything with your magic. So, for your character alone, you are in a sort of post scarcity society. You can live off of your own abilities. Um, and especially if you come together as a coven, then everyone's abilities together that you will not want for
Hmm.
anything.
But you still
But you
get
have
that
no,
isolation to the rest of the
yeah,
mundane world.
you have very little ability to sort of pay that back into your community. You're not you're cut off from your community. So a big part of the game is, what are you going to give back to your community? Are you going to make your community a better place? Are you going to let it rise up with you, or are you going to take the rewards for yourself in the form of hoarding fey fruit, and just do with that what you will? And there's no wrong answer there. Either way leads to extremely interesting outcomes, usually in the form of how you retire your character.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of all up to the players and the coven as to what your individual goals are and what your goals as a coven are, and that's really going to shape almost everything you do.
Mhm. Well, I think that's a great time to segue into the actual gameplay and how that works. So, with Witches of Midnight, Forged in the Dark game, they have a fairly standard gameplay loop that anyone who's played Blades in the Dark will be familiar with. You have a little bit of downtime, you talk amongst each other, you decide what you're going to do, then you go on a mission. The GM starts you off right in the action of things with the engagement dice, I believe it is. You play through that, you get the outcome, you do your experience and all that. You have some more downtime, pretty much rinse and repeat. Witches
Yeah.
of Midnight follows that general gameplay loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, actually, pretty much entirely. The difference I would say there is sometimes you might decide to start what we call an undertaking rather than a score or a mission, but
Mhm.
you might start an undertaking with some wild magic. You might say, I'm not in the fictional position to go and do this thing, but if I can use this powerful wild magic, maybe I can just teleport that item to us and we'll be done, and then we'll just go recover. And that's good until you fail.
Mm-hmm.
And then the grand consequences commence. um, but yeah, usually they do play out in a very similar format. You just like in a Blades in the Dark or most other Forged in the Dark games, the players, the coven, they make a plan, they follow that with a detail or a method and a detail, and then go on to the engagement roll. And then once you get in there, your powers, your grimoire powers, which are your playbook powers, they don't tend to produce grand consequences. They're the things you can do fairly regularly without having to worry too much about whether they'll succeed or fail. So if you're a telekinetic, we're never going to make you roll a telekinesis roll unless it's a very, very strange circumstance, because that's something you're good at. And this game is very, uh, John Harper says it as well, never negate a successful roll. Well, that goes for grimoire powers as well, in our opinion. If a player has a power that says they can unlock a door, then and they use it
Mm-hmm.
and they pay the cost, they unlock the door. You don't take that away from them.
Excellent.
That's number one.
Love that.
Yeah. But other than that, yes, it is very, very similar in the gameplay loop.
Yeah.
There is one major difference in the uh, when you get to downtime and you start rolling for entanglements.
Mm-hmm.
You also roll for personal entanglements, which are based on the type of creature that you get bargains from. So for most characters, that's the Fae. For some characters, it is a strange elder god from another realm. For some characters, it's a mythical creature, and for others, it might be a nature spirit. But for the majority of characters, it is a Fey bargain.
Mm-hmm. And that ties directly back to the Blades in the Dark Devil's Bargain
Exactly.
as a way to. It's been a while since I've played in the dark. It played those particular games. You can basically make a bargain with the GM for an additional dice or an additional effect or something like that. But there's going to be some weirdness to it that you have to accept.
Yeah, yeah. So we play that 100% straight. The witch is kind of reaching out in their mind, maybe unconsciously, and saying, "I need help with this." And there are invisible fae all around the world, in pretty much every nook and cranny of every room, that might be able to help you. Your enemy might stumble a little bit on your way to engage with them and give you an edge. And maybe that was because a Fae ran out from under the carpet and tripped them up.
Mm.
And you mark down a pact tick on your character sheet whenever you take one of those bargains. And as your pacts fill up, eventually that becomes a contract.
Mm.
And you have to pay back that contract. But you don't usually pay it to the individual creatures that helped you. They're probably unknown, but they sell that as a type of currency to other Fae, corporeal Fae, or sapient Fae.
Who can show up at your Covenstead and be like, you have to do this
Mm.
right now.
Love it.
You owe me because I bought these fair and square from these other Fae. And as your contracts get bigger and bigger and bigger, they expect you to do bigger and greater things for them. And the same goes with a mythical creature. If your character says, "Oh, I don't want to have anything to do with the Fae," they might have a mythical creature that helps them, and maybe it's minions or other spirits that it's friendly with are the ones that are assisting you. But eventually, that mythical creature is going to come calling as
Mm-hmm.
well.
You got to pay
Their
up.
roles might align a little better with yours because they are a patron that you picked, that you wanted to be close to. But I promise you, it will still be a cost.
Mm. And I think
Luckily,
that's an excellent way to help promote the story constantly moving forward in the short term, while then sending a long term, both personal and I suppose even coven
yeah.
story aspect that can come up later.
Yeah, some characters might decide to keep their Fey contracts a secret from their coven mates,
Mhm.
and just say, okay, well, Hey, while we're on this undertaking against Corpus Templi Solaris, I want to go down into their library. Not for any big deal reason. I just want to see what they have. Maybe they have something cool. But maybe you were sent there to get a particular book for a particular fey creature that needs it. And whether you decide to do what they ask, maybe you go above and beyond and you get them every book. Maybe you'll make a good friend in the long run. But yeah, you try to accomplish those while the rest of it's a way of breaking up, splitting the party, which in most games is an absolute no-no.
Oh, I
But
love
in
it.
Fortune in the Dark games, it's perfection.
Hmm.
So it's sort of a way of splitting the party and giving each character their own additional goals. So the Lore Weaver gets a really good chance to throw tiny little monkey wrenches into everyone's plans, possibly create a little drama. And if the players decide that they're going to share their Fey contracts with the rest of their coven and say, hey, do this with me. I know you don't owe this contract, I do, but if you'll do this with me, I'll help you out with yours. Then you're bringing the coven together. You're bringing everyone closer together. And that's great too. Either way, it's great for the story. And if
Hmm.
you don't do the contract, well, that's really great for the story too.
Yeah, it
If
works
you
out both
decide,
ways.
I don't like what this capo wants me to do. I think I'll just abandon the mission, and
Ooh.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you will. Love it. Love it. Uh, well, we kind of jumped straight down to the question about what sort of stories you can tell with Witches of Midnight, and it sounds like you can tell a lot, and there's a lot of different tools built into the rule set of this game that allow you to, as I said, short-term and long-term, goals continually moving forward. And I think that is one of the big strengths of Forge in the Dark, and I've seen it in other games since I first started playing Blades in the Dark. The concept of almost always failing forward,
Yeah.
or yeah, something like that. And I think we'll leave all you fine people to go explore the intricacies of Forged in the Dark rule set as it is on your own. We're here mostly to talk about Witches of Midnight, but I do really love the staples of Forged in the Dark. The way dice are the way rolls are resolved in degrees of success, degrees of complications. You're almost always moving things forward. You very rarely get to the point where things just stop. The worst that can happen is things start rolling downhill quickly, but you're still moving forward, just not in the
Yeah.
direction you were planning on going. So it's a game that does a very good job of propelling the story forward. There's a lot of different ways to track all kinds of things that you can be doing personally as a group through stories, with the clock system, which I see that you guys, of course, are rolling over in Witches of Midnight. And one of my favorite things about Forge in the Dark is flashback mechanics and always being able to say, I have what I need available. I just check off a previously ambiguous resource. So this is a game that will really help players who don't want to engage in the Shadowrun motif of 3 sessions worth of planning and
Oh no.
micromanaging every little thing. You can jump into the game straight with the engagement roll, get into the action. If you say, hey, I wish I had that, you just go, hey, flashback, or hey, I got this out. What does that look like in Witches of Midnight, and how might you have tweaked any of that?
Yeah, so in the quick start, we have the bare bones rules that are very similar to a Blades in the Dark flashback, including a willpower cost, which is our version of stress. In the manuscript version, the version that's coming out on Kickstarter, it's called Tempt the Fates, and it is it is worked into the story that your characters are in some way or another they are playing with the strings of fate when they make those distinctions about uh, changing things, even if it usually doesn't show up as a change. It looks like it was there the whole time, but in a way, you're kind of you share the fate with your coven. So once you're initiated into your coven shares a fate score, which is a lot like heat in Blades,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
uh, as well as scum and villainy. Um, you share that, and so when you make changes to reality in that way, you are bringing your coven into the eye line of the fates, and as those go up, the fates might start fighting back, pushing uh,
Mm.
larger factions toward you, and saying, you guys should get involved with them. So that's sort of how the game ramps up in as you raise your coven's circle. You're also inevitably gaining infamy with the fates. So it is similar, but it's we took everything we loved in Blades, and rather than leaving it as a mechanic, we tied it into the magical storyline.
Hmm.
So that is one of those elements that and it's really simple. It's easy to use, and it also is how you control your familiar. So you use flashbacks to maneuver your familiar, so you can have your familiar assist you as well by saying, "Oh, my possum familiar is in the air vent above the enemy's head." So, and then if you need to make a roll for that, it's tempt the fates, and
Mm.
you see how well it goes, and whether they are up there, and whether they remembered to bring that potion that you really wanted. Crafting is also another huge thing that we make a lot more in-depth use of. So we have arcanum crafting, we have magical uh, potions, any kind of physical spell work, potions, uh, doorway marks, sigils, and things like that are all a basic part of the game that all witches can access.
Yeah, so it looks like this follows a lot of the same basic structure of Fortune in the Dark, but instead of just, changing nouns here and there, you incorporate it in and make it an impactful and meaningful part of the narrative, and really explain how it all interacts with each other, with the gameplay, with the world around you. Uh,
Yeah, I think the impetus for that was uh, it's a devil's bargain, but what if the devil was real?
mhm.
And he can come knock at your door.
And
Right.
not just a jerk GM.
Yeah. As with most Forged in the Dark games, the lore weaver in a Witches of Midnight game, wow, jumped back to a previous edition. The lore weaver in Witches of Midnight is the greatest cheerleader of the
Hmm.
Coven. The Coven is the main characters of the game, absolutely, with no caveats.
Hmm.
100%. And when you build a coven, you'll see absolutely that's the case. Uh, you literally build the storyline for yourself as you go during coven creation in the current iteration.
Mm.
So the players get to choose what factions they want to interact with, and they get to choose or make their own choose from a list of questions or make their own questions that their characters want to answer over the course of the game, as well as a long list of themes that they could decide to use to answer those
Hmm.
questions. So, an example might be we want to be allied with Shadow Dawn, which is a mysterious, very low powered Fae organization of extremely mad Fae. And the question that the players might want to answer as a coven is, why are they so out there? Why are they so mad? What happened? That might be the question. You don't answer that during coven creation.
Hmm.
You just ask that question and let it stew with your lore weaver.
Love
And
it.
then you would talk about the themes, and you'd say, well, we want to answer that question, and we would love it to have the theme of betrayal. So let's talk about what made those Fae insane, and that it has something to do with betrayal. And so they're giving the lore weaver the toolkit
Hmm.
to start developing their own storyline, just based off of some really simple prompts.
I
And
love that.
that is in part from Ironsworn,
Hmm.
which is a great solo and even small group
Yeah.
game. as well as a Fistful of Darkness, which was a Blades
Mm-hmm.
in the Dark hack that we absolutely
Yeah.
adore.
Mm-hmm.
Had some amazing world building and played a pretty big role in us realizing how much power we could give to both the players and the lore weaver
Mm-hmm.
to develop their own storylines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because which media is such a huge part of our culture right now, we wanted to be able to tell almost any kind of story that you see in modern witch media, whether you're going to tell the story of fledgling witches who are just starting to come into their power, like was it the craft?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
so.
the craft, or you want to tell about an academy of witches, like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, or even older characters. That's completely fine. You have all that room, and we have factions that help you sort of play out any of those worlds. We were
Mm-hmm.
particularly inspired by a show called Motherland Fort Salem, as well as another show called Salem. And those are distinctly
Very
different
different.
Mm-hmm.
shows about witchcraft, and both of them fit equally well into our world. And that goes even for such things as the Owl House, even though our game is a lot darker than that in general terms. Uh, we feel like there is an element of that in any, or there's that potential if that's what the lore weaver and the coven want to see. So we wanted to facilitate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out some of these recommendations and touchstones you have, because I'm not terribly familiar with the
Oh,
genre. I'm more of a sci-fi person, so I see a lot of
ooh.
relations between cyberpunk and what else was I just thinking? Old Traveler games.
Mm-hmm.
But I love games, and I love games that include character creation that really blends not just mechanically creating your character, but adds in both the creation of backstory and plot moving forward. So I think it's fantastic that you have these questions and you have all these factions and all these considerations that not only define your character mechanically and, you know, as they come into play, but help define where they came from and where they're going. And that really helps
Yeah.
from a GM's perspective as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, you've got your character and their particular goals, as well as their personality and how those interact with their coven. And then you have your familiar, which is its own completely separate
Hmm.
creature that you have a significant amount of control over. But even that creature might have its own enemies and allies.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it really comes together into sort of this beautiful flower of potential. And that all comes out of that coven creation. And then the character creation on top of that is like sort of the outer petals. They're what everybody sees from a
Hmm.
distance, but inside there's just it's an onion,
Love
you
it.
know, layers.
Love it. Yes. Well, speaking to that, we obviously don't have time to go into everything this game has to offer because there's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of customization. But from just what I've seen, it doesn't look overly dense. It looks like it does a really good job of walking you through it and allowing versatility and being evocative more than you know, presenting analysis paralysis or anything like that. But just to throw out some game specs that we have here, you have 13 different standard grimoires and 9 different heritage grimoires. Those are your playbooks that help
Yep.
define your abilities and how you get experience and the things that you can do. So that's 21 different playbooks in total that you can choose from. And those heritages we talked about before the show, they're your like your races, your classes. You have cool thing. What name a small handful of
Yeah.
what you can play as
Uh,
aside from your
I'd say
typical human witch.
one of the most evocative ones is probably the Squatch. They
Yeah.
have cryptid blood in their veins,
Hmm.
and you can play that as I'm of Squatch heritage,
Or
but
you
I
could be any cryptid that you wanted to be,
yeah.
which is super fun. Let's see, we have gobs, which are kind of like our goblin stand-in. We
Hmm.
have, you can be a what do you call them? Our fish person one, a
Nereid,
Nereid,
yeah.
and they get the whole swimming, shape of water kind of situation going on,
Right.
and that's for fun.
Asterians,
Asterians.
which are the descendants of the Minotaur of I think Crete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can play a full on Minotaur. One
Or
of my
Gorgons.
Gorgons,
Mm-hmm.
descended from Medusa. Yeah, pretty much any kind of mythological creature you can think of. There is probably a heritage that at least spawns something that can
Mm-hmm.
go in that direction. It's kind of reminiscent now that I'm thinking about it, about the way Shadowrun did trolls, and you start with a troll, but
Mm-hmm.
then you branch out, and it's like, well, I'm of a troll bloodline, but I'm actually a cyclops or
Mm-hmm.
a yeti.
Goblin.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like that. You have different bloodlines, and then you have Median witches, which means that they pass for complete humans. They pass as mundane,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be incredibly useful in
Yeah.
some situations.
Yeah.
But despite what heritage you choose, you get to choose your traits. So
Mhm.
you could play a squatch that is of completely normal height and does not have hair covering their entire body, and they are still just as much a squatch as the thing that looks like it walked right off of that
Mm.
videotape from all those years ago. And if you grasp an arcanum, a magical item that is meant for your bloodline, it's going to work just as well for you as it is for them. We even have a faction that assists people if they have heritage traits that make it difficult for them to get around in Midnight,
Mm.
called Rara Avis, and they live on their own island, kind of an island of Dr. Moreau kind of thing. And it can be a really interesting place to visit. We've done beach party sessions where the characters all go off to Rara Avis to hang out with them and see their little mini utopian society.
Mm.
Yeah, there's so much fun and so much leeway and diversity. Um, there's no hard lore, or there's very little hard
Mm-hmm.
lore. There's the timeline, but it's very each table can definitely do what they want with it. Um, the lore is not structured in such a way as to make it more difficult for you to play the game. It's to be evocative and to give you ideas about what you might want to see more of in the game.
Love
So
it.
if you're really excited about something that happened in 1972 on the timeline, feel free to dive right into that as being a touchstone of your own coven.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you could say our parents. That's why we all know each other. Our parents were all involved in that. And now we're trying to figure out the mysteries that still linger.
Yeah, we played a super fun, like 1920s, 1930s game where we were all alcohol runners, so that was fun.
Fun. Fun.
Yeah, we changed around everything. So the Fae were in charge during Prohibition, and the Fae were basically the mafia, and creating these portals into speakeasies that people could go into, and they were just racking up the contracts.
That
And
makes a surprising amount of sense to me.
and witches were brewing all the alcohol because they're such fantastic crafters. Yeah, it was a weird symbiosis, and we actually were able to work that into sort of how the world turned into how it is now in the
Mm-hmm.
modern sessions. So yeah, you can also play outside of Midnight either by porting our factions to the other areas. And just tweaking their tier levels. So you might say, well, the order is still around, they're still effective in Norway. They're still binding witches, but they're only tier 2. They don't have the power. They don't have a private army or anything like that. And you can even go into the interior of North America and tell a story there by telling a story in an insular community where they've made a deal with the native people that live in that area that they will have certain land that's theirs and versus theirs. And but each of those places comes with its own fun curse. So it might be a curse because they stole the land from the people who lived there, and so they cursed the land. Or it might be a curse, and that's why the land was available for them to
Mm.
come and take.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell these interesting stories about these insular communities that have their own very specific rules about maybe a witch's conduct. Maybe in those communities they still do witch hunts and still burn witches. If that's the kind of story you want to tell, those are the perfect places to tell them. So, despite it being a hopeful horror urban game, it has a ton of leeway. If you've got a story you want to tell, there's probably a place for it in Witches of Midnight.
Yeah, we have some plans to do some expansions in other places, and one of the places that I'm most excited about expanding to is Appalachia. I feel like that's going to be super fun.
There's a lot you can do there.
There's a lot
Oh yeah.
there.
Oh
We,
yeah.
we happened to very randomly move to a town in Appalachia that is the same town that the Old Gods from Appalachia podcast hails from. So we're very excited when we found that out, that
Yeah.
when we go to our local game store, we are going to the game store that Cam Banks and the other people of Old Gods of Appalachia
Wow.
bought their dice from. So that's pretty cool.
Very nice. Excellent. No, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, there's a lot to this game that you can play around with. Yeah, that was my next question. When the full book comes out, when you fulfill your Kickstarter, because it's gonna happen, I'm throwing it out there. When you get that all put together and released, what sort of extra stuff is gonna be in the full book as far as running the game side of things? Because I know you've mentioned a number of different ways you can customize it. You're going to have different GM tools and different things in there to help shape the story.
Yeah. So we're going for 22 playbooks, 22 factions is our bare minimum. We already have plans for stretch goals that will go well beyond those 22. So we're we're maybe in the range of 28 to 30 playbooks at launch if we fund to a decent level. We'll also be including a tarot deck in the Kickstarter, and our team is making that tarot deck, so it's completely custom, and it's going to be 100 cards, 22 major arcana that represent each of the grimoires, uh, 56 minor arcana, which are all of the potential familiars. Well, not all, because there's no way you
so
could.
many.
Yeah, but 56 familiars. So if you want to pull a random familiar for your character, you can just grab the deck and give it a shuffle and pull out a card. You've got that, and then there are going to be 22 additional cards that are going to use art from the modeling and the photography that we have licensed and used, and the models that we've worked directly with to model our characters, which has been an absolutely amazing part of this whole process. There will be 22 cards that are photographic quality of our models that we work with, that represent each of the factions of the game. So if you need to pull a random faction, say, yeah, you guys did a great job, but you left a little evidence. Let's see what faction picks up that evidence. Oh, it's the Ever Vigilant Eye. You can just pull a card right out of that Major Arcana deck, and they say something about the factions. Andrea's writing the guidebook for those, and
So it will function as a normal tarot deck. You can use it like I do regular pools on a regular basis, and you can definitely do those. And then it also wraps back around into the game, and I think that is super awesome. We also have one of the best artists I feel around, Robot Rainbows, who is doing our artwork, and we're gonna have 3 cards ready for the Kickstarter, so you'll be able to see a couple of samples. And I think we've got the Death card so far, we've got the Magician card, and I think we're gonna do Judgment last. And so you'll be able to see those 3. And so far, I am so impressed. It's
Awesome.
so good.
and
She's amazing.
yeah, and she's doing all those as time lapses, so people will be able to watch videos of her making those cards. And
We
that's
have regular like Discord parties where you can come in and we'll sit and we'll design together. Like we'll tell her, okay, we want this, this, and this in the card, and she just does it, and it's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see those. I know on the document you sent me, there's a tarot card back mock-up that looks
Mhm.
beautiful. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what all of those will look like. And it's I always really like Kickstarters that include and games that use these extra little features,
Mhm.
like Terra dice or Terra cards, and you have your own custom dice that you're working on as well.
Yeah. You want
Yeah.
to describe that? Because I don't think we've ever talked
Yeah,
about
I don't
that
think we've ever
publicly.
described it. So I'm thinking we're gonna go with resin dice. The company that we work with does really beautiful metal dice as well. We've actually been doing a couple of giveaways with them, and we still have one more giveaway if we get what is it?
500 followers on Midnight Gift.
So if you want to be entered into a possible dice giveaway, go follow us on Twitter. But yes, so this company is going to make. We're going to have resin dice. They're going to be this. We have like kind of a custom color that's this dark blue purple color.
Hmm.
The dice are going to be very Art Deco in style. So nice sharp lines, and yeah, we're gonna have our triple moon as our six, and it's gonna be so beautiful. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
Awesome.
really sparkly, deep
Yeah,
dice that you feel like you could get lost in,
yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
looking deeply into someone's dark
Kind of
blue
feel
eyes.
like the color of magic in your
Yeah,
hand.
There you go. Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, can't wait to see those as well. All right. Well, before we jump into any more details of the Kickstarter, I did just want to ask because this is a game about witches. What is spellcasting like in this game? How does that work?
Yeah,
It's super, super intuitive. I feel just like in everyday witchcraft, your intentions are what is super important in casting magic. And in our game, you choose your powers, and then we also have a mechanic where you can bump up your spell. Like if you want to just affect one person, you can affect one person. But if you want to affect a whole crowd of people, you just throw a couple of extra essence in there, and you can do that if your roll is good.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, so it does. It feels very intuitive, and it feels very much like our practice.
yeah. It's yeah, hugely intention based. So,
Mhm.
um, you'll have an array of powers. Each character is going to start with at least two or three, in addition to the ability to fly, which is already pretty awesome to begin with. And with those powers, you have sort of a framework for the things you can do, and then you have a massive magnitude chart of 13 levels deep of things that you can add to your spells. So if you use a spell that's straight off of your grimoire, it's going to be perfectly effective and awesome. But if you decide, yeah, instead of one person, I need to affect a crowd, or instead of casting this on someone I can touch, I need to cast it on someone that I have a material link to in my hand, like I snipped off some of their hair during our last undertaking, and I want to use that to cast a spell on them. You just bump it up in magnitude, spend some extra essence, and you're good to go.
Awesome.
Like I said, with wild magic, you could do
I
an
do
entire
anything.
yeah, you could do an entire undertaking just by making one wild magic attempt. You could do the same thing with your actual powers. So let's say you had a power called Evil Eye, which is a general power that any witch can take, and you decided I want to use Evil Eye on the entire board of directors of Corpus Templi Solaris, and just wipe them out so they feel like absolute garbage, and they are going to be a pushover to do anything we want to. It's going to take you a lot of essence, and you might even do it as a big group action so everyone can use their essence together. And if it goes well, then you're in a really good position to maybe do a big corporate takeover that
Mm.
session. And if it doesn't go well, maybe witches that work for them will be able to track back your spell and make take an offensive against you.
Hmm.
Um, it's
I
yeah,
feel like the question that Gavin always asks first, and that we like to ask of any players when you say that I want to use this magical spell, I want to use this power. Well, it's like, well, what is your intention with that? What do you want to do with that? How do you want it to affect whoever the focus is? And yeah, I always think that's super helpful to get people to describe what they want to
Hmm.
happen. I feel like a lot of people who have played other games and they're coming to a Forge in the Dark game for the first time, it's really hard to well, I'm just going to use magic missile and it's going to blow
Right.
up. I'm going to roll my one die and it's over. With this game style, you have to describe what you want. You have to say what your intention is before the roll, before the action is done,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then you get to decide, depending on your role, how much of that actually happened, how did it happen, how did it work out, which
And
is
it
another
encouraged.
reason we love Fortune the Dark so
Mm-hmm.
much.
And it sounded like it encourages the players to be creative in the way they use
Yeah.
their spells. They're not just flipping over to a spell book menu and going, I
Mhm.
want fireball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. If we had a fireball, it would be like, are you trying to set this person's hair on fire? Are you trying to kill them? Because if you want to kill an NPC, it's probably not going to be that difficult for you. So it's more about why you want to
Mm-hmm.
kill them rather than if you can. Because if you will it, you can probably make it happen
Mm.
either with your own grimoire abilities or by going the wild magic route. So it's more about what you want to accomplish. If you're engaging with someone or a group of people to fight them, does it matter how well you can fight, or does it matter that you want to scare them away, or it's the same action regardless, but it tells a lot about your character's mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and in the discussion that you have with your lore weaver and players, you're actually developing things about your character that even you might not have known
Mm-hmm.
before you came up with that action. And so what we say is every time you've added to the game world, either by telling us about your character's past or telling us about your character's physicality, telling us about your character's disabilities, any of those things, you're going to gain experience because you have added something to the game world.
Love it.
Even if you kill an NPC, you have added depth to the game world
Mm-hmm.
because now we're going to build out who comes to fill that power vacuum.
And now we know your character's a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
perhaps
you're,
even why or to what extent, because as you said,
exactly.
intention is key.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. Intention and consent are the two pillars, I say, of all Forged in the Dark
Yeah.
games, but particularly in Witches of Midnight. Character death is
Mm-hmm.
completely consent based. Character retirement is consent based. Um, Familiar death is consent based. Complications are consent based. You can always resist. And when you run out of willpower, your character takes a little breather, and
Mm-hmm.
then comes back into the action in the next undertaking. It's as simple as that. We don't we don't need to break each other's consent to tell a good story.
Mm-hmm.
We can tell a good story consensually, and that's one of the reasons why those questions during Coven creation exist, because they tell the lore weaver, along with safety tools, which are built directly into the game. So
Awesome.
when you fill out a Coven sheet, your lore weaver is also filling out a consent form. And then everybody's going to sign off on that before you start your first session of play.
Excellent.
So session 0 baked into the game. Consent tools, lines and veils, completely baked into the game in very specific game specific ways.
Yeah.
I love that.
Including such gems as at what age can a wild witch gain their powers and thus be bound? Because if that age is 16,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling a different kind of
Yeah.
story than if that age is 21 or 42.
Mm-hmm.
And we love a group that wants to put that age at 42 or 80 for that matter. I want to see that game. I love the idea.
Mm.
But if that age is 16, you're telling a certain kind of story. You know what questions you need to ask to make sure you have
how much
everyone's
how much danger do you want to put children into?
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You immediately, just by answering that very first question, you have already um, put a range of lines and veils out
Mm-hmm.
there that could come into play, that so you know exactly what questions to ask the group, so that you make sure you're not going to step on anybody's toes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to run a game that causes people strife,
Love
because
it.
that's not
Love
what
it.
we're about.
Yeah, that's something I talk about all the time on my main RPGs Uncovered series, so I will say it again here. Session zeros and safety tools are so important. At this point, I don't play in a game that doesn't have them. I don't run a game in which I don't use them myself. They're integral to telling the best story that we can. It's not just about making sure that everybody is, you know, enjoying things, though that is very important to a game. If you're playing a game and you're not enjoying it, why are you playing?
Why are you there?
Yeah, yeah. But one of my favorite little I don't know, little sayings is consensual discomfort is what I love to see. What are you okay with feeling uncomfortable or discomforted about, and how far can we take it? And talking about that ahead of time and establishing those boundaries is
Hmm.
key to making the best story that you can, because it can be daunting as a GM to have this cool idea and not know if this is going to trigger someone or step on anyone's toes. So
Mhm.
having that conversation ahead of time is very important. I love games that bake that into the game and the story itself, because it means it's something that you have to do. It's built in.
It's something we haven't seen enough of,
Yeah.
and so you know we're a lot of the aspects of the game were how can we do this in a way that's more consensual, more um, diverse, and more accepting of
Mm-hmm.
differences. And that's why we built casting style.
Yeah.
Uh, and something I want to talk about since we're on the topic
Yeah.
of consent is casting style. And the reason that casting style is a thing is because when you look at a power, it's never going to tell you you have to cut a chicken's head off to cast this spell, or you have to pray to a certain god, or anything like that. What it's going to tell you is what the effect is, and your casting style tells you and your coven mates and your lore weaver what your character does to cast spells. So if you want to play a Wiccan character in the game, you're going to define during your character creation, and possibly somewhat during coven creation, you're going to define what it is you do in general terms to cast spells. And it's kind of like having a fun little difficulty slider.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I cast spells with a wand? Okay, I can be disarmed of my wand. I could be caught unawares in my coven stead without my wand under my pillow. I could get my wand teleported away from me. But do I want to tweak that slider up a little higher? Do I want to say I can cast with this wand only?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I can cast spells only under a full moon. You're cranking that slider all the way up, you're going to get a ton of XP, but your
Mm-hmm.
character is going to have a really hard time casting spells during the game. You tweak that slider all the way down to the other level, and you're almost playing a superhero game because people are just like force of will,
Mm-hmm.
fire. The whole building is on fire, and that's completely fine if that's the way your group wants to play. But that's why that's built into Coven
Mm-hmm.
creation, because where you put that slider for each individual character tells you a lot about what they want to see in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we love.
Yeah, it sounds like it adds a lot of character diversity and nuance.
Hmm. We have a character who was a gob that would dig her fingers into the dirt to cast spells, and there are a lot of times where there's not dirt under
Mm.
your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she had that difficulty slider cranked pretty far up, and I promise you, it did not make the game any less fun for her to play or for the rest of the group. It made it really, really interesting. People trying to find ways to get her some dirt,
Mm-hmm.
or her trying to find ways to make sure she had some dirt under her fingertips at all times. Yeah, it's fun and interesting stuff, and you're gonna excite the whole group with your ideas about your casting style. And if your character does worship a particular deity, you just decide, do I hold my holy symbol when I cast? Well, is your holy symbol here right now? You're telling the lore weaver what you want to see and what you're willing to sometimes let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And you can burn those restrictions. So that's one of the meta magics of the game is boosting and burning. And restrictions like casting style can be burned, which means you can spend extra essence to bypass that restriction for a single spell casting. And one of the ways we use the tarot is that as you work your journey through the tarot cards, you basically make a journey through the major arcana. You can, when you reach the point that you started at, you can permanently burn away one aspect of your casting style.
Oh.
So you're shifting that slider back down. And as your coven's gaining power and you're facing more powerful enemies, maybe you can't have one hand holding your holy symbol at all times. And so, you decide that's what you're going to do. Yeah, so many, so many sliders in this game. And yet, uh, when you build a character, it generally takes about, for us, 3 minutes. For most people, 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, it's a really simple character creation process. And if you've watched a movie and you were really, really enthused about a certain witch and a certain way they cast, I can assure you, you can bring that into Witches of Midnight and use that as long as your coven is cool with it, and you're going to have a good time.
Kind of
Excellent.
segueing off of that, I wanted to mention that we have sensitivity readers and we have made sure that witches and the religions around them have been respected, and that the people there, it's variety, it's very much variable, and we wanted to make sure that racial appropriations didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen, and that we made it clear that witchcraft that you do in the game needs to be appropriate to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent.
There's a discussion about closed practices versus open practices, and where we stand on that as the game's designers, and some advice for picking casting styles in those regards. So yeah, it's all about consent and talking to your group and deciding what's going to be the most fun for you all to play together. Yeah, and it comes together in a really easy way. It's not pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, like I said, it sounds like it's clear you've put a lot of work into this, a lot of your own creativity, time, creativity, energy. And it sounds like you've worked with a lot of people to make sure that this is, as you said, focuses on diversity and accessibility and consent. And I love that that is so built into this game. Uh, Excellent, excellent. So we're butting up at time here, but we've talked quite a bit about this game, and I still feel like there's so much we can explore with
We
this.
could go on and
Uh,
on.
so I will say, when you're done watching this, if you want to see more Witches of Midnight, I know you've done a number of different interviews with other people, and you have more stuff coming up. Of course, the Kickstarter is going to drop on the 21st, so go explore all that. Hang out on Twitter. You guys got a Discord. Let me go ahead and drop the Twitter link once again. But in summation, we've talked quite a bit about the setting. We've looked at a number of different factions, like you said, 22 different factions, about the same or more playbooks, grimoires that you can play. You have your heritages that you can explore. We've talked about bargains. We've talked extensively about the nuance and evocativeness of magic and all the ways that you can adjust those sliders here and there. Is there any other big part of this game that you really want to entice people with?
We didn't talk about familiars. So,
Not
um,
much, yeah.
so familiar, your animal companion kind of situation. There's also a line of play where we can be our familiars.
Oh,
You can
fun.
play an all familiar game if that is something that you wanted to do, and I would highly encourage it because it is super super fun
Yeah.
working within those restrictions of, like, one of my favorite familiars was a cicada,
Hmm.
and there's not a whole lot a cicada can do, but it's important. It can do a lot of little things, and it can get into a lot of little places that a lot of other things can't get to. But so yeah, you can play an all familiar campaign, or session, or however you want to do it, but it is super fun to do that.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
I wanted to mention, because you mentioned technology is a huge fun point for you. When we originally designed the game, one of our main ideas for storylines was the idea that some witches are looking for ways to incorporate
Mm,
technology into their practice, and some factions are looking for ways to make technological weapons that work better against witches.
mm.
So you have both of those types of factions butting heads. You also have pharmaceutical factions that are trying to make
There's just so many
Love
places
it.
that you
cures,
can go.
yeah, cures for diseases using witch DNA. Uh, the question of are witches fully human is a possible campaign
Mm,
level question that you can ask,
that would be
and
fun.
yeah, the answer can be completely up to you.
Yeah. No, I love that you've taken this game about witches and witchcraft and magic and fantasy, and you've really integrated it into the modern world. Because a lot of games, a lot of World of Darkness to some certain extent is kind of more or less removed
Yeah.
from general society and technology and all that. So it's really interesting that you do get this sort of I'm coining this now, witch punk aspect of the game. I love it.
Careful, there's actually a game called Witchpunk,
Is there?
and
I gotta look that
That's
up.
awesome.
All right.
yeah.
Well, I
But
didn't happen to coin that, but I love the phrase.
yeah, uh, yeah, exactly. It is very punk in both the in your face, change the world, revolutionary way. Uh, Most covens are going to touch on that it to some degree. It's also punk in that you can get back to your community roots as
Hmm.
part of a game. Like I said, bettering your community and bringing down your infamy level with the fates is actually and bringing down your fate contracts is actually an important and integral part of the game. So making your characters part of their community and becoming loved by the people that you're around rather than being removed from them is a sort of hopeful end game. Why we call it a hopeful horror game. There are eldritch monstrosities in the sewers, or maybe far below, or maybe out in deep astral space. And those things are terrifying and terrible, but the game is hopeful because your characters are so powerful that if there's something you want to change in the world, your characters have the power to change it.
Love it. Love it. Well, I think that is an excellent way to wrap up our discussion of the gameplay itself. But before we get going, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the Kickstarter. Again, this is launching on June 21st. So mark your calendars. Go over to the link that I will drop right now and hit that notification button so
Yes,
you can
please.
hop onto that. Are you guys doing any? I believe you said you were like an early bird special sort of deal.
Yeah, we are. Not only are we running games all the way up to the launch and a little bit beyond, we're also doing an early bird special. So the first 24 hours, any backer that backs at a physical item tier that includes shipping will receive an enamel pin that says
Powered by
"Powered by
Witchpunk.
Witchcraft," which is sort of our
Hmm.
game company's
Little logo.
unofficial
Yeah.
logo or
Our slogan.
slogan. Yeah, "Powered by Witchcraft," and it's on a beautiful golden colored metal. Looks great.
It does.
You can show off to your friends the stuff that you love. You know, if you like to put them
Your
on your
pieces of
purse.
flair,
Yeah, your flair.
Mm, excellent.
Yeah, so that's available, and there are a lot of other things available, and the price points literally go all the way down to $1. So we are a hard leftist cooperative. We are all about sharing. And so if you can't afford to pay the full price for the PDF when that comes out and the tarot deck, which comes with it, then consider backing at a low level, backing at the dollar level, and getting access to the manuscript PDF that will be fully playable. It just won't include the art or the expensive layout
Hmm.
that we will have to,
Yeah.
these are things we have to pay freelancers to
Oh
do
yeah.
because we don't those skills are
Uh,
sought after and expensive.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
and difficult.
yes,
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We have laid out a number of
Mm-mm.
one-page and two-page games, and I feel like Francita could probably do a 100-page book in the time it took me to
Hmm.
lay out a pamphlet. So
I understand that. I do.
they earn it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
do you have those price points worked out?
We do, but we're tweaking everything kind of right up to the last
Sure.
minute as need be. We will, like I said, have a dollar tier that you can back, and as soon as that manuscript PDF becomes in its final state, even dollar backers will receive that.
I know we had kind of decided what we were gonna do for like the whole package with the book, the tarot deck and guidebook, and the dice, and that
Mhm.
was
123.
120.
All right,
It's
for
going to be
all the gizmos
All
and
the things.
gadgets. Awesome.
everything. Yeah, 66 set, a 100 card tarot deck that you can use for the game. It actually includes extra optional rules that use the tarot deck that interface back with the main game. So you can bring in some extra fun stuff
Yeah.
from the guidebook to give your characters a little extra XP
Fun.
in the main game. And yeah, and then the core rulebook, which is hovering around 240 to 300 pages. And like I said, we've been playtesting it for about 2 years, so I can assure you
It's very playable.
it is
Mhm.
very playable.
Excellent. Excellent.
Even the quick start,
Yeah.
as you've seen,
Yeah.
is has a huge amount of playability
Hmm.
in it, even without the coven level questions. It's got 4
Hmm.
pre-built covens, so if you want to jump right into a game with the quick start, it's a great
Which I
place to
think
start.
the quick start is still free right now,
It
isn't it?
is,
So
yeah.
you can go like
Excellent.
get a little taste and see if you want the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the art in there really gives
Hmm.
you a good taste of the kind of stuff you're going to see in the core rulebook.
Yeah.
So if you want to know sort of the models that we're working with, uh, they're right in there around page 28ish, I think, maybe somewhere in the mid 20s. And yeah, you'll see a lot of the models we're working with, and it'll really give you an idea if this grabs you.
Hmm.
With the diversity of the models and the factions that
Yeah.
are included.
I feel like we can't end this without saying thank you to Morningstar and Megan and Azale Wynn,
Mm-hmm.
who are our cast that we stream with. Morningstar is also one of the models in our book. You've probably seen him on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, he's a beautiful man, and if you want like an actual card of his, you can get it in our tarot deck.
There you go.
Yeah,
Excellent.
you should see some of his characters as well as some of him actually physically on some of the cards. So yeah, because he is the faction leader of
The order.
the Order, kind of the faction leader of the Red Watch,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
the faction leader of Morningstar Academy.
All
So he is
right.
a major player in a
Yeah.
lot of realms of the fiction.
Very nice. Very nice. And I know you are working on some stretch goals. I know you're still tweaking them, but they are mostly based around additional grimoires.
Yes, we're looking at least 6 additional grimoires, some that we'll be making, but the
Mm-hmm.
vast majority
Hmm.
of which will be made by other indie TTRPG developers that you probably already know, love, and have some of their books on your
And I've
bookshelf.
probably seen streaming with us once
Yeah,
or
that's
twice.
true.
Mm. Very
They
nice.
have been
Guest
they may have
stars
been
every
guest stars.
Yeah, I see some nice names on here, so I'm excited for the Kickstarter page to release. So you can go check that out and help fund towards getting even more indie creators together. Because that is one of the things I love about working with the indie TTRPG community is the amount of collaboration and excitement and enthusiasm that we all just bounce off of each other. It's
Mhm.
beautiful.
Absolutely.
I think that's why we called ourselves Balsamic Moon Games Collective, because we
There you
wanted to
go.
be, a group that incorporates and listens to and can be a place where people get heard.
Excellent. All right. Well, to wrap this up, again, when this fully funds, and then some, what is fulfillment going to look like? Do you have a timeline for when people are going to get their rewards?
Yeah, we're looking to have the manuscript ready by this coming October, and then we will have it fully laid out by March of next year, at which time we will. I'm trying to remember what else. We'll be fulfilling PDFs for everyone.
Yeah.
And then we'll move into the printing process. We have given ourselves until October of 2024, but we expect that there's a good chance we won't need all of that time.
Because we've done a lot of the heavy work beforehand.
The manuscript, as we've said, is about 95% complete at this point. So giving ourselves all the way until October might be completely unnecessary. So Francita's actually already started laying out parts of the book. So
I think the rest of it will be finishing up the tarot deck and the
Yeah.
guidebook and getting the dice situated.
yeah.
Excellent.
So October 2024 is the absolute latest. That's what we're putting on the Kickstarter because we want to give ourselves plenty of time.
Yeah.
Everybody that works with us has a primary job. This is all secondary for us, even though we put our literal hearts and soul
Yes.
into it. We have to pay the bills in another way. So we are trying to bring this stuff to you as inexpensively as
And as
possible
quickly as possible.
and as quickly as possible because we don't have the time. I think if we could put the time into it that we absolutely think that we would like to,
it would be done much faster.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, October 2024 is the absolute will. Yeah.
Excellent. No, there's nothing wrong with giving yourself all the time you need. I always say take the time you need to make the best product you can, because you can't rush this out and then do a day one, week one, month one update like you do on video games. Once it's out, it's pretty much out. And there's always things to consider like shipping and printing and all that stuff. So I know talking to a lot of indie creators just how complicated this can be. So a year to work towards fulfillment is not an issue at all. Sounds like some excellent stuff. So June 21st, the Kickstarter will launch. Go ahead and click on the website over in the comments to get that notification of when it goes live. Get that early bird special. Get your cool pin. You can see. I believe it should follow the same design as your Powered by Witchcraft logo, which is just under my head. So you can see what you're getting there. Looks like some great stuff. So I can't wait to see what this is all about. I'm going to be checking out more of that actual play. Going to be checking out more of these interviews. So go hang out on Twitter with them. Go hang out on their Discord. And hey, you can come hang out on my Twitter and my Discord because we're introduced now. We're all going to hang out. It's going to be a great time.
Well, I'm already there. I'll drag her over there soon.
Excellent.
I'm more of a shoulder peeker. I peek over his shoulder.
Very nice. All right. Well, I think that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Gavin, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. It was a vast pleasure talking with both of you. Again, I can see how much energy and thought and enthusiasm you put into that, and that is exactly why I run this show, because it feeds me.
Oh, that's great.
So I wish you all the best of luck. And again, when this fulfills, I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see more people playing it, including perhaps we'll talk about it on this channel. I'd love to get a one shot or something set up. So we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk. All right. So thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Go check that out, and keep checking in here at RPGs Uncovered to help you find your next favorite indie TTRPG for your game, teach you how to play, teach you how to run it, and introduce you to more amazing, fabulous, hardworking, creative folks like these two we have here. And until then, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, keep having fun out there, keep checking back here for more indie TTRPG content. Happy time zone, folks.